In the previous video, we triggered a build in Jenkins, which produced a Debian package. This triggered our first Spinnaker pipeline, which baked the Debian into a machine image, which we then deployed to a test cluster. We're going to pick up where we left off and create an end-to-end deployment pipeline that will take a change in source code all the way to production. Note that many of the pipelines in this video take a long time, so I'll be doing a lot of fast forwarding. First, we're going to modify the bake and deploy pipeline we created in the previous video. We're going to add a destroy server group stage. We give the stage the coordinates to find the server group to destroy. We want to destroy the previous server group in the CodeLab test cluster. This will clean up our cloud resources as we run our pipeline repeatedly. Next, we'll add a manual judgment stage, which we'll name validate test. We'll configure this pipeline to be triggered by the bake and deploy pipeline. The manual judgment stage pauses the pipeline until it's triggered to restart in the UI. This could allow a QA team to evaluate the test server group. Note that it's possible to configure notifications with Spinnaker to notify users on the state of pipeline stages. Also note that there are ways to automate the evaluation of your test server group by creating pipeline stages that will run integration tests. Before we create our promotion pipeline, we need to create a production load balancer, which we'll imagine is serving real traffic. We'll give it the same configuration as our test load balancer, but we'll give it the stack name prod. Our production deployments will be configured to use this load balancer. Now that we've created a production load balancer, we'll create a final pipeline, which we'll name promote to prod. This pipeline will be triggered by the validate test or manual judgment pipeline, but only if that pipeline doesn't fail. We're going to add a find image stage, which we'll configure to take the coordinates of our successful test server group. It will find the image running on the newest server group in our CodeLab test cluster. Spinnaker promotes the tenets of immutable infrastructure. That is, the exact machine image that passed through our test environment should be promoted to production without changes. Finally, we add a deploy stage. The deployment configuration will be the same as in our test cluster, but with two changes. We're going to attach the server group to our production load balancer, and we're going to deploy with a red-black strategy. This means that every time a new server group is deployed in this pipeline, the previous server group is disabled from the load balancer but not destroyed. This allows for quick rollbacks, which we'll demonstrate later. Note that the first run of this pipeline will not have a server group to roll back to. Also note that the image we're deploying is implicit. It's inferred from the upstream find image stage. We're going to run through our pipeline twice so that we can do a rollback. These pipelines will take a while to run, so I'm going to heavily fast forward through the process and point out a few highlights. The first run I'll trigger manually in Jenkins, and the second I'll trigger from a git commit. Just like in the last video, we've deployed an image in our test cluster, but now that we've added the destroy server group stage, we can see the previous server group is starting to come down and will be destroyed. After the bake and deploy pipeline completes, we should see the manual judgment pipeline start. We'll trust that our server group is healthy and confirm that the pipeline should continue. After we confirm the manual judgment, the promote to prod pipeline is triggered. The new server group will come up in the CodeLab prod cluster and will be attached to our production load balancer. Our server group is up in the CodeLab production cluster, and our first run of our pipeline is completed. Now for the final run of our pipeline. Like the CodeLab on Spinnaker.io suggests, we're going to make a change to the source code for our sample app, which will trigger our Jenkins job. We're going to skip ahead to where the pipeline actually completes, but the point here is that Spinnaker allows you to automate entire development workflows from git commit through to production deployment. The behavior of the pipeline was exactly the same, except that due to our red-black deployment strategy, our previous production server group is disabled but not destroyed, as indicated by the translucent blue rectangles in the UI. If we click roll back, the previous version is reattached to the load balancer. We will see the blue rectangles turn back to green as they are reattached. This is the end of the Google Source to Production CodeLab. Check out the other CodeLabs and documentation at Spinnaker.io.